On the heels of Britney Spears' tragic testimony regarding her conservatorship and the control that her father has over her personal life, we're learning more details about what she's trying to do in order to free herself, considering that it's been incredibly difficult to get the courts to agree to releasing her from this conservatorship. Now, her next court date is on July 14th, so we'll see if there's any development in regard to actually doing the right thing and allowing her to have some agency in her life. But we're also learning that she has a different strategy, a different plan as well, and that is to retire. Because as she said in her testimony, she feels that family members who are on her payroll are exploiting her and exploiting the situation. So Spears' longtime manager of 25 years, his name's Larry Rudolph, has actually resigned, stating that Spears no longer wants to be a mega pop star. So he says this in a statement. It's been over 2.5 years since Britney and I last communicated, at which time she informed me she wanted to take an indefinite work hiatus. Earlier today, I became aware that Britney had been voicing her intention to officially retire. As you know, he continues, I have never been part of the conservatorship nor its operations, so I'm not privy to many of these details. I was originally hired at Britney's request to help manage and assist her with her career. And as her manager, I believe it is in Britney's best interest for me to resign from her team as my professional services are no longer needed. So he's stepping down.
But let me just translate that super quick. That means I don't want any part of this S show. Okay, like this is now I don't want to get blamed for the conservatorship. She's not making any money anyway. Now she's retiring. All I can get is negative press out of this. I don't want any part of it. I'm out.
As part of her testimony, by the way, she talked about how she's exhausted and she's ready to retire, but she was terrified to voice that opinion because she was concerned that that would lead to more punishment, meaning an extension of this conservatorship. Right, and so she wanted to remove her IUD so she could have more children. But under a conservatorship, the person who's controlling you essentially gets to decide whether or not that IUD comes out. And they decided against it. I mean, that's how insane this story is. And she was placed under conservatorship under her father, Jamie Spears, back in 2008. And listen, she was clearly going through something very serious in 2008. So while I could understand the arguments in favor of it early on, it's now been many, many years, and she has proven herself to be a responsible adult who deserves her own freedom.
Yeah, we were just talking about this during the break. You know what? This is a good opportunity to throw this in. I want to apologize to Britney Spears.
So do I.
Yeah, because what we were talking about during the break is who could have withstood that kind of scrutiny? Like back when she was the mega star, and remember when she shaved her head? I don't remember what I said about it, but I guarantee you it wasn't great, right? And so there's a lot of people looking and going, haha, and I hope we've matured here. I think we've matured, and by the way, the other thing that happened in the meanwhile is that we've received tremendous pressure throughout the years, right? So, but nothing like Britney. The whole world was looking at her and judging her and judging her and judging her. Now, having dealt with a fraction of that, right? Sorry, like for everything, really. And in this case, there's something weird here. There's something inexplicable. Like, why would you keep her in that? Like, sometimes you have to put people in conservatorship. It's true, because sometimes they could be a danger to themselves, et cetera, right? So it's not an easy black and white thing. Okay, oh, you put everybody, you put nobody. No, but in this case, she seems to have every sign of sanity here. She's saying, please, for God's sake, let me out. She's asking super reasonable requests. I didn't watch the documentary or anything, but just looking at the news, I don't get it. Why did the judge say no? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So if things appear to be what they are on the surface, and they do a whole documentary, by the way, I should say, and the family doesn't respond at all. It seems like to me, right? Like now maybe they're trying to protect Britney. That sounds less likely these days, right? But if people are saying, hey, you're malicious and you're terrible and you're robbing your own daughter blind, et cetera, you might come out and say, you know what, guys? On Thursday, this happened, right? And I love my daughter and I hate that it happened. But you see why I can't let go of the conservatorship? Because I'm worried about her, right? But none of that, as far as I've seen, none of that, right?
Right.
And so then I'm confounded by why they haven't freed her yet.
Well, that might be coming soon. So I'll give you the details in just a second. But before I forget, I do want to go back to an important point you made regarding the treatment of Britney Spears back in 2008, right? Back when she was placed under conservatorship. You know, I did watch that documentary about this whole situation, and you don't notice it because society and culture does change slowly, and it happens when you're not really paying close attention to it. But going back and watching the way that she was interviewed, right? There's this infamous Diane Sawyer part of the documentary where she's interviewing Britney Spears and honestly, essentially just shaming her for being too risque, for dressing provocatively, for being scantily clad. But remember, at the same time, the industry demanded that of her. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. She was in a lose-lose situation. And I also want to apologize because I'm not making excuses for myself. I mean, I should have been smarter than that, right? But when that's the culture, and everyone talks about women that way as if it's like the most normal thing in the world. Even women like myself, you internalize it and you think like, yeah, this is how women should be treated, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't just for me. I hope it wasn't about women, but look, I said what I said, so it's your right to criticize it. I criticize it, right? It was about celebrities. I felt like celebrities were just something to laugh at, right? It was free reign, right? And so that was, and I was way older than you, so it's even more my fault, right? And I should have been more mature by that age, but I wasn't, right? And so and it's not just about sexual stuff, right? And we did that, right? But when I think back to the old days, the one thing that really, I think about Amy Winehouse because I have her on my playlist, right? And I'm like, whoa, no. I know she was going through some stuff and I know it looked weird and we thought we were having fun with it, but then she died. No.
And the fact that she was addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, media decided to victimize her as a result of her addiction, and yeah, it was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. So I want to give you some more details on the story though, because as I mentioned, July 14th is the next court date. I'm hoping that the courts make the right decision here, but following her testimony, there were other members of her team that decided to jump ship because of how disgusting this conservatorship is and the fact that she spoke out against it. So TMZ reported that Spears's court-appointed lawyer, Sam Ingram, who has represented her since she was first placed under the conservatorship in 2008, planned to file documents immediately asking to be dismissed as her counsel. This comes after the Bessemer Trust, which was appointed in November as her co-conservator of her financial affairs and her considerable estate, filed papers asking the court to approve its resignation due to changed circumstances. Bessemer said that it had been waiting on paperwork before starting its work for the estate and had collected no fees. So the reason why there was a co-conservator was because Spears rightly was concerned about her father managing her finances. And clearly that is a conflict of interest, right? Because if the father has control over the finances of a superstar, he's gonna wanna keep her under his control because it's a gravy train, right? So that's why that co-conservatorship or co-conservator situation took place. And so the hope here is, following Bessemer's resignation and following all these other resignations, the courts will look at the situation and say, no, we're done with this. We're going to lift the conservatorship and give Britney the freedom that she deserves. And Jody Montgomery will not be stepping down from her role as Britney Spears' conservator, saying that the pop singer has asked her to stay on. So a lawyer for Jody Montgomery says this: Miss Montgomery has no plans to step down as Miss Spears' temporary conservator of the person. She remains committed to steadfastly supporting Miss Spears in every way she can within the scope of her duties as a conservator of the person. Miss Spears as recently as yesterday has asked Montgomery to continue to serve. Montgomery will continue to serve as conservator as long as Spears and the courts desire her to do so. And that I would argue probably makes sense, because if Bessemer, pulls out of this co-conservator situation, well then who's managing her finances while we wait for the courts to decide what happens ultimately?
Yeah, the reason I love doing the show with you guys is because you make great points, and I'm really glad I read this in the middle. One of our members wrote in, "Don't shoot, I'm the goalkeeper." That's their name. Wrote in, Kanye West and Gary Busey have legitimate mental illnesses, and they don't need a conservator. I wonder what the difference is between them and Britney. Great question. I have no idea. That's such a great question. Kanye obviously has massive mental health issues, right? And yet no conservatorship, and let alone the things he's doing in public. My God, what is he doing with his money? You remember a couple of years back, he came out and was begging Mark Zuckerberg to give him money because he's black, and he was saying you can't let a black billionaire go bankrupt like this, or some insane diatribe like that. And nobody ever says, oh, we should get a conservatorship for him, right? But it was, so Britney was a young woman when they put her into the conservatorship, and they just will not let her out. And look, last thing on this story is, so we talked about how we were complicit in like there's this ha-ha culture about celebrities, partly because I think we were all like had this thing that goes back to the mainstream media of they're rich, they're famous, we'll get pound them, right?
That's right.
And by the way, they have no political power, they have nothing, they're not gonna affect anything else, etc. So it's an easy way for a so-called journalist to look tough by going after Britney Spears. I always remember Mike Wallace just devastating Ricky Williams, a random NFL player who had done a little bit of marijuana, etc. And I remember him being really like, he was supposed to be so tough, but I also watched a whole bunch of interviews when I respected him, and I'm like, man, he went really soft there on politicians, businessmen, and then Ricky Williams, he just obliterated. Why? Because Ricky Williams has no power, right? And Britney had no power, and so we were all guilty of that. But the last set of people who were guilty, in a lot of these instances, and here again, the courts are hiding all of the evidence, so it's so hard to tell. I don't want to, maybe the family has some points and we just have never, ever seen them, right? But anyways, it's usually the family members and the friends. So there's a story of the guy who started, I think, Zappos. And in that case, the family and friends became enablers. Because once somebody has an obscene amount of money, the worst kind of people circle around them. Right? And so not the best family members, not the best friends, but usually the worst. And so they either enable drug habits, etc., or they find a way to capture, in this case, quite literally, right? Through the courts, and then siphon off the money. And so, man, be careful what you wish for. Money is a hell of a thing, and it really pollutes so many people. So, but if things are as they appear to be, for God's sake, free Britney Spears. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.